Hello, my name is Dwayne Kimball, owner and founder of KMD 89 VA Claims Consulting, Leave No Vet Behind, and also I'm a United States Army veteran. And today I'm here with a fellow Army veteran, and we're going to be discussing the high level review process and timeline. I begin to ask a lot of questions. How long does it take for a high level review? What does that process look like? I've even did some videos on it. And one of my subscribers and a previous client of mine so graciously decided to do this live testimony, and I am so excited. And we're here today with Demetria. Demetria, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Nice to finally meet you, Dwayne.
Yeah, I know this is our first time actually meeting, especially this on video. A lot of people are doing things by Zoom. So again, definitely thank you for your service, and thank you for doing this testimony because I'm pretty sure it's going to give some insight. You're going to be able to give some insight to our fellow veterans out there as it pertains to the high level review process. So before we get started, if you could just tell us a little bit about your military background, what branch of service you served, and what you did in the Army.
Sure. So I'm a signal officer, and I had I joined I got on active duty in '99, but I was commissioned before that. I went through an early commissioning program, so I had to complete my degree, and then I went on active duty. So I did 4 years of active duty. I got out, joined the Guard, ended up landing a job in the Guard that required me to be part of the Guard, and then they mobilized my entire state. So I was back on active duty 9 months later, and I got deployed to Iraq. So I'm also a Gulf War veteran.
Okay, okay. Well, appreciate it. Hey, thank you for your service, and I definitely appreciate you sharing that. Now, I noticed, we were speaking earlier before we came on the recording about a little bit about the high level review process, and you left a comment on one of the videos I did, and I mean, when I say it jumped out at me, I woke up about 6 o'clock one morning, and I was like, man, I read it, and I was like, wait a minute, and I read it again. I was like, hey, we got to get this. I got to capture this because so many veterans are not educated on the VA claims process, but more so as it pertains to the high level review process. Okay. So I know you just went through it. So let's start with when you filed that 0996 and you submitted that to the VA for a high level review. What happened after that? Who contacted you? But after you submitted that VA form 20-0996, what happened next?
Yeah, so I just want to back up before that. I filed a claim back in November and it was decided in February, but I didn't file the high level review till August 11th. And the reason is I was working on some other claims and I didn't want too many things going on. I wanted to get my other claims put in, and then I was going to do the high level review because I don't want a lot of concurrent things going on. So the decision was in February. I filed August 11th, and I got a call September 29th. I was actually at an appointment, and it was a number from Chicago. I live in New Jersey, and something was telling me answer it, and I was waiting for the Cairo basically to come in, and I get a lot of junk calls, so I screen them, and usually my phone says potential spam. Something was telling me to answer it, and I got the call, and she identified herself with the VA, and she said she's calling to schedule a high level review. So I said, okay, so what's your availability? When do these things typically get scheduled? She says we have to do it within like the next 5 days. I said, okay, how does your schedule look tomorrow? So basically the next day. I gave her a time and we locked it in, and she says, okay. I didn't know she was the same person that was going to be calling me, but basically the person that called to schedule it was the same person that conducted the high level review.
Oh, and that's so important. I'm glad you clarified that timeline where you submitted your claim in November. They made the decision, you said February of this year, correct? And
Yes.
then you turned around and you submitted the 0996 and someone gave you a call. So from the time when you submitted that request for a high level review and you received that phone call to schedule, it was a little bit over a month.
Yeah, like maybe 45 days, I would say.
Okay. Okay.
From August 11th to September 30th is when it was conducted.
Okay. So for everybody to understand that's going to see this is you selected, Demetrius selected for informal conference. Okay. Because on 0996, you can request a formal, informal conference. I'm sorry. So they call you, you schedule it, they call and schedule it, and then they call you back for the actual informal conference. And how, when the individual called, how did that conversation go when they initially called you?
Yes. So she started off by saying that, she's calling about the high level review. I said, okay, well, I have some questions for you before we proceed. So I said, I'm going to be typing as we're talking. So you may hear my keyboard, and I also recorded it for my own records. All right. I said, I'm going to be asking you some questions. So the first set of questions I asked, and this is before this recent video you posted. You had posted about some questions to ask on a high-level review in a previous video. And it was those 4 questions. What's your name? What's the 3-digit code of the office you're working out of? Are you the person that's authorized that will be making a decision on my claim? And have you reviewed all my evidence related to this? So I got that out of the way, and that actually sets the tone, right? Because when you start asking those questions, they know you've done your research, and they know you're ready to get down to business. I didn't call it chit chat, or I didn't request for this for a chit chat. This was, I had objectives for this. So after we got all that established, I asked my first question. And so when I got my decision, I noticed my private doctor's evidence wasn't listed. But I know from having received my claims file, which is something you've talked about, that same private doctor for prior claims from, he's submitted medical evidence for me before he's given me medical opinions and stuff, and they have listed his evidence. So so I know it's been listed in previous decisions, and I referenced that. I said in the claims file, he's been listed in previous decisions, and also I know that you received his that the medical evidence related to this claim, because I received my claims file was the CD was dated on this date, so I can see the medical evidence. So you received it. So why was it considered in this decision? I said, he has been seeing me for 12 years and treating me for 12 years. I see him every 2 weeks. We have an hour session, and the examiner only saw me for 22 minutes. So after that, and after that, there was a huge pause, and she says, well, the reason it wasn't considered was because it was misfiled as correspondence, and it should have been filed as medical evidence, but I'm going to refile it as medical evidence and consider it for this decision. So I'm thinking to myself, how many times has this happened? I'm sure this has happened to other veterans, and I think it's intentional. I personally feel that way. Just from having recently gone to CMP exams, I just bring a hard copy of all my evidence that I file, the private evidence, and I just give it to the examiner, because I don't think they can see it. I think they see what only the VA allows them to see. So basically, so she says, I'm going to consider it. So now that I know that she's considering it, I started going through it and pointing out some things that was in the private medical evidence that wasn't in the decision. For example, there was a diagnostic code my private doctor added that's part of what he's treating me with. It's just something that's come up during the treatment. And I wanted this added to the decision, because this was a claim related to PTSD, and so for those claims they lump all the mental disorders together, so you don't get a rating for each one. So I wanted the additional mental disorder that was identified, I wanted it tacked on, because down the road, if it becomes more disabling than the PTSD, I don't have a record of it. It's not on some official decision. So I made a case for that. I made a case for how he checked certain blocks on the DBQ, and the examiner checked the same blocks, but she didn't list it. So she says, well, maybe she didn't want to opine on it. I said, no, she just didn't have time. And I'll tell you what happened. Because when I went in for the exam, she made me fill out these forms, and I took a picture of them with my phone. So I know when the forms were stamped with my phone. And I told her they were date stamped, time stamped on this time. So then she called me in, and her DBQ was digitally signed on this time. She conducted that exam in 22 minutes. Of course, she didn't have time to add the diagnostic codes and to give, like thorough, detailed stuff. And so she understood that, and she says, okay, she basically conceded that she's going to add that diagnostic code to the decision, to the overall rating. I knew this wasn't going to move the needle. All right. I knew my percentage wasn't going to change, but I wanted that tacked on. So I wanted her to list his evidence, tack on that diagnostic code. And then we talked about something else I wanted, but I couldn't get that achieved. But I did point to the medical evidence that showed that, I made a case for it, basically. And she said she would consider it. But in her final decision, she said why she didn't. She actually explained why she didn't. So I basically got what I wanted out of it. I got my medical evidence considered. Oh, and then the other thing I asked her to do is to revise the decision because it had conflicting information. I said, well, based on how it's written, I should be evaluated at a higher percentage. And I said, it's very conflicting the way it reads. And she says, I apologize. It's a poorly written decision. She admitted that. And she says it shouldn't have been written that way. I mean, look, the decision letter went out the day after my CMP exam was completed. Of course it was rushed.
Right.
And I knew that from having received it. So she said she will fix the decision, and she will write it so it's more cohesive. And so at the end, I said, okay, so we're in agreement. You're gonna you're gonna add on that other diagnostic code to my overall whatever. You're gonna add my doctor's evidence. You're gonna list it as evidence, and you're gonna revise the decision. Yes, she said, and then consider the other thing that I mentioned. She says, yes, we're in agreement. And she said, you should expect to see an updated decision in the next 2 weeks. Well, I got it like in 5 days. I got it, I think the 4th or the 5th of October. Okay. Lightning speed. The other thing she told me that I thought was very insightful is, I guess the reviewers have an amount of time. There's some metric in which they have to, do their decision letters. Yep. Right. The high level reviewers have not only more discretion, but they have more time to review the evidence. So if you have all the evidence in your claims file to make a case, a high level review is more beneficial because things that may have been overlooked by somebody that made the original decision can be caught by the high level reviewer because they have more time with the evidence, and you can make your case for that at a high level review.
Right. You pointed out, and I'm smiling because I'm just like, you did everything right. And then there was some things that I didn't talk about that you did. You went that extra mile. You put that time in, and that's what I'm trying to explain to veterans. Everything that you did a perfect job. I'm sitting here, I'm smiling because I'm like, I'm excited. I felt like I'm in my appeal. I felt like I was on that phone call with you. You know what I mean? But some things you said that really jumped out at me. Now, when you asked the question, well, let's back up. So everything that you wanted to achieve from this high level review, you actually achieved that, and it was in that decision that you received October 5th, correct?
Yes, and what a huge difference. I'm talking, she listed I didn't have all the 38 CFRs. I only had 2 of them, and they were stupid. They were the ones that basically were like, okay, your at 70%, you have to have this at 100. Like, okay, I can read the 38 CFR and know that. Like, what's specific about that? She actually pulled out everything from the DBQs that justified the 70% rating. She was very meticulous. She listed all these 38 CFRs that weren't on the other decision. For example, here, I was just going to read some off. Reasonable doubt, procedural due process and appellate rights, finality of decisions, revision of decisions, Department of Veteran Affairs assistance in developing claims, general rating considerations, essentials of evaluating ratings, interpretation of examination reports, resolution of reasonable doubt,
There it is.
evaluation of evidence, higher of two eval. Yeah, so none of those were listed. This is like, I think that these were all listed. It's like a CYA on their part. Like
Right.
They weren't before, so now they're covering all the bases.
Yeah. And you won't get all of that in a regular rating decision from a rater or
Yeah.
RSR, just because that decision review officer obviously is looking at more, and they put a little bit more regulations in those particular decisions. But I wanted to make a comment about when you said that your evidence was listed incorrectly, correspondence. Now, I used to work in that system, and that system is called VBMSR. And regardless of how it's labeled, if an adjudicator is reviewing a claim, they're supposed to click on each and every link. Now, each person that reviewed your file, if they clicked on that link and said, oh, wait a minute, it just says correspondence, it should be labeled this. They can change it. So obviously in this situation, everyone that reviewed that or supposedly reviewed that up until that decision review officer, if they reviewed it, they just didn't do it. And it's shame on them because they should have changed it for the next person. So that alleviates maybe a couple of minutes where if you're just looking for something, oh, well, there it is. It's private medical evidence and just not correspondence, but they're supposed to be clicking on each one. But one thing I did want to ask, when you asked the question, have you reviewed my HLR review? What was the response from that particular reviewer?
She said she had. She was very professional. She said she reviewed that. She reviewed all the claim evidence related to it. And if the answer was going to be no to any of that, I would have taken the next steps, whether it was going to be the White House hotline thing, which works, or Iris or whatever. I would have taken the next steps, but she was ready. And she even, thanked me. She says, I wish all my high-level reviews were like this, where you challenge the evidence. She says she doesn't get a lot of veterans that challenge, all the answers are probably right there.
Yeah.
You have to make a case for yourself. You're your best advocate. Nobody's going to do it for you.
You are actually giving me chills right now because I am like, and what you did was you gave her a moment of pause. And I think she was the type of person that really appreciated that because like you said, she mentioned that a lot of veterans don't challenge it, but you went out, you did the education, and we talked prior to this about some things a little bit. You watched some of the videos that I did, you asked some of those questions, and you went out and got a copy of your VA claims folder. You reviewed it. You knew what you wanted that outcome to be before you even submitted that 0996. And these are a lot of things that I'm talking in my videos about that veterans, they're not doing. And you went through and you was like A, B, C, D, you connected the dots and you knew what outcome you wanted and how to achieve that. And that's what a lot of veterans are missing. They're saying, oh, I'm just going to do a high level review. And then I asked them all the questions that you did and they have no clue. And you went through and I'm just, man, that is so.
And I scripted all my questions. I didn't want to be babbling. You don't want to go in there, you want to go in there and establish that you mean business. So read from a script. She doesn't know you're reading from, you don't see her. just read it,
Right.
and it
Right.
helps you organize your thoughts better when you sit down and actually write them.
And it was crazy. I talked about, I don't know if you saw this video, but I did a video last year where I talked about my VA claims experience and my appeal. And I wrote all my stuff down on a yellow notepad. I wrote it all down. So I knew when I went in there, I wasn't just talking. Oh, well, well, I did this and this happened. And well, wait a minute. Well, Private Johnson pushed me when we were in formation. I kind of, you went in there with the script. This is what I'm appealing, or, appealing on the high level review. This evidence is already in my claims file. I received a CD, so I know it's there, like you mentioned. And she was just like, I'm pretty sure she really appreciated that because you directed the conversation where you wanted the outcome to go, or, what outcome that you wanted to achieve. And it's just so, I tell you, I was so elated when I saw that comment. I'm serious. I was like, I got to reach out to her and ask her, hey, we got to get this recorded, because if I tell somebody, that's going to be like, oh, Dwayne just doing another video, but actually hearing it from a veteran that went through that process and how it actually worked for you. I am so happy that, you received that outcome, because a lot of veterans, they don't, but they didn't do what you did. Like you said, like she said, you question the evidence. So, man, like I said, I just got goosebumps right now because
Well, I think if you feel you have, it's very important to take the time and submit the right evidence and write the right lay statements, because you can like get so much accomplished in a high level review, but you have to know your evidence. You have to know, you have to organize your thoughts, script your questions, reference pages, because she went back and forth between documents. She says, yeah, I see where you're saying this, that. So she was following along. All right. But you can get a lot accomplished in a high level review. It just depends on what the objective is. Like in my case, I knew I wasn't going to move the needle, probably. All right. But I wanted certain things fixed in that decision letter, because to me it was substandard. It was just kind of like rushed, and it looked like a rush job. So just moving forward, the other thing I would recommend for veterans, and by the way, I'm trying to do what you're doing, help fellow veterans, and that's why I'm doing this testimonial, because I think the more we talk about this, the more we help each other. But moving forward, like I would have, what I would be doing is establishing, like articulating my objectives from the beginning. I want this accomplished, this accomplished, this accomplished. And when you have, like, I have a lot of contentions now I'm waiting for a decision on, at least 7 or 9, something like that. All right. With that many contentions, I don't know what kind of decision I'm going to receive. But if I have to challenge it, I would start the high level review after I kind of set the stage. I would say, okay, I'm going to go through each of these contentions in this order. This is what my agenda is. So if you have a complex claim that, you want a high level review for, you probably need to kind of establish an agenda and articulate it at the beginning. And it shows that you're more organized going into it.
Right. And I think that's so key. And I can honestly say, even if what you did, if your outcome was trying to move that needle, I think you would have moved it, most definitely. But more so, you went through it once, you saw what you did to help you be successful. So if you have to go through it again, I know, one, you're definitely going to be comfortable, you're going to be educated, and you're going to get that outcome. If it's, moving the needle, whatever your objective is, I have a strong feeling that you will be successful in doing that. And, you stated that, you have to, when you were talking about document things and not over talking, how long did this informal conference take? Was it 15 minutes, 30 minutes? Did she let you go past 30 minutes? Did it go 45 minutes?
It was, I think 43, and she actually sends and documents, it's called high-level review informal conference worksheet. So this worksheet has the claimant's name, the date it was conducted, file name, time began 12 o'clock, time concluded 12:45, and who she is and her code. And it basically certifies she conducted the high-level review. So she indicates the start and end time on there. It was 45 minutes from soup to nuts.
Well, you know, I think she was doing, it should have been recorded, if I'm not mistaken. Did she say did she mention that she was recording it?
I don't know, but I did.
Okay. And I think that's another question that needs to be asked. Are you recording this? Because when I used to facilitate in-person hearings, I had a recorder. And then we had to send that recording off to the San Diego regional office, and they would transcribe it, put it on paper, and send it back, and we would put it in the veterans claims file. So that probably be another question, is this being recorded? And if so, how do I get a copy of it?
Well, that's a good point, because this doesn't really, this is just a worksheet saying she conducted it, and then she digitally signed it at the bottom to certify it, you know, but that's a good point.
Did she send it to you?
So this worksheet, no, my VSO pulled it from VBMS. I asked him for the decision, and he sent me everything that was, he goes, this was everything that was in VBMS for this decision. So it was the decision letter, it was this conference worksheet, and there's a notification letter that was in there too. So there was like 3 documents related to the high-level review. So, I mean, I saw the decision was out, and I know these letters take forever. So, you know, that's, the VSO is kind of good for those types of things.
Right. That's what I use mine for, exactly what you just, to
pull documents, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you said that was a high-level review worksheet?
Yeah, it's called a high-level review informal conference worksheet. And there's a section where it's section 1 says administrative data. So it's basically my information and her information. And then there's section 2 is acknowledgement, where she checks a block. She says, I certify that I have read the following statement to the claimant and his or her representative. So there's a statement she read for me. And then section 3, informal conference, gives a summary of what exactly the high-level review was for and what was the decision date. And then there's some stuff there, and then her signature. I can send it to you if you want.
No, the reason why I asked the name of that, because I'm gonna go into the M21.5, which covers the appeals process, and I'm gonna do a keyword search for that informal conference worksheet, because I want to do a YouTube video on it. But yeah, if you want to send it to me, or, you know, I think you have a folder in the portal.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And then I can just, you know, we can redact it from there. Because I think that's a key piece. And I think that's a question that, you know, I'm gonna start, adding to the questions that I originally had about, you know, what you should ask. Because I'm pretty sure she was like, really, you know, I was like, man, if I could have been a fly, like a fly on the wall, if I could have been a fly on that, in that conversation when you said, which regional office do you work out of? What is the 3-digit designation? I know she was like, wait a minute, how does she know this stuff? Why she's asking me this? You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? I didn't know that they had 3-digit codes, but it's come in handy ever since you mentioned it. It's come in handy in other applications. Like I went to my regional office to get all my CMP exams, and the guy says, what are you here for? And they previously printed them for me before. They just have like amnesia, right? So I said, I came to get CMP exams. And the guy says, well, we stopped printing those years ago. I said, I pulled out the one they printed, like the one that you looked at, the one that you looked at for me.
Yeah,
And I said, well, you printed this one here. And he says, well, I don't know who printed that. Just have a seat. And I actually got him to print, this was like a couple of weeks ago for this current claim. He printed all the CMP exams, and I also have all the medical opinions, which is an internal document. So I already know the answer. I just don't know what the percentages are going to be. So when I have to do this next high-level review, if they do anything squirrely and, you know, like they don't opine on something. I already know the answers. I know what I'm being service connected for, and I know how I'm going to challenge it if I have to. And in some cases, I may have to move the needle. You know, I probably will. I anticipate being service connected for a lot of those contentions, but I expect them to lowball the percentages. That's what I'm anticipating. Yeah.
So, you know, it's, you know, I'm glad that you challenged it. I'm glad that you reached out and you were a client of ours and you gave us the opportunity to educate you. And I remember in one of our conversations, we was talking about, I think it was 38 CFR 3.385 or something. And I was looking at something different. And you even challenged me. You was like, well, Dwayne, according to this, and I was like, you know what? You're right. I was like, you know, I looked at it, I was like, you're right. And you have to do that. I didn't take it the wrong way. I'm like, man, yeah. And I'm like, well, I wonder what this outcome is going to be. And is that adjudicator going to be looking at it the same way I did? You know, because you're not going to be there to challenge them. But later on, like you said, in a different application, now you know that 38 CFR and be like, wait a minute, according to this CMP exam, you can point that stuff out.
That's one thing I've learned from you is the interpreting the 38 CFRs, and then you have to tie it back. You should pull all the DBQs you're going to be examined for and see how the VA is going to rate you. I mean, that's the 38 CFRs are the grading sheets. So what I've learned from you is going in and, you know, interpreting those, and that helps you study. That's your study guide to study for the CMP exams.
And I even talked about that on this last, actually, what's the date? It's coming out today at 5 o'clock. What is it? 3. And on there, I talk about what makes VA exams and DBQs insufficient, and talking about the diagnostic code criteria and where's that diagnostic code criteria on that DBQ. And then in other videos, I talked about, hey, why don't you take a DBQ to your exam with you? So if that doctor missed some of those questions, hey, wait a minute, you missed question such and such, because you know that's part of the diagnostic code criteria. And if they didn't answer that or ask you that question, where are they going to get that information from? And if they look at it the next day, you know, they may miss it.
But you see, like, what do you call it? Sorry about this. I already see some, with the CMP exams, some issues that I'm going to have to challenge. For example, like when they ask how it impacts your work, some of the examiners said it does because they asked me. One didn't, even though I said to her, look, it asks about work impact. She was more concerned about documenting my medical history, which is as important. So I may have to go back and, you know, if that becomes an issue, it's for range of motion. I don't think work impact is important as much as how much there's a functional impairment, right? Versus work on that one. But I, you know, I mean, just from watching your videos, I know now how to interpret all that and going forward, challenging it. So the next one's going to be like a long, high level review.
I can tell you're just chomping at the bit, and you're like, I hope that they get it wrong, because I'm ready to just like jump all over this. But you know, I'm so ecstatic. I truly am. You know, I could say you're the first veteran since I've been doing this. November 1st will make it 3 years that you actually, I mean, everything was like, every box was checked. You did this, check. I did this, check. And even in conversation today and previous conversations, people tell me often, oh, I looked at all your videos. When you're telling me you looked at a video, you'll say, hey, you said this or you said that. And I know that you looked at it, and that information, it sounds like that information helped you be successful in what you were trying to do with your particular claim.
Oh yeah, I've leveraged a lot of your advice. I mean, I was almost not gonna go to my CMP exams, but I thought, let me do it because I have my private ones anyway that I've submitted. I can challenge those too. I mean, I can have it both ways. You see what I'm saying? Right. And I know that for a fact with one, I went in for an increase for cranial neuropathy, and my private doctor checked one, but at the max amount, like the max percentage. The CMP examiner checked 5 cranial nerves, but not the one that should have been max. So I'm going to challenge that because they can't give me a rating for each cranial nerve. It's considered pyramiding. They have to give you, right. I understand that.
I was about to say, you said that. But you know what? You didn't even break stride when you said it. You just went into like, hey, they can't do this because that's going to be pyramiding.
Yep. I already know that. So I'm going to challenge it. So I almost wasn't going to go to the exams, but you know what? I just said, let me do it because I have mine as backup. And it's good that it's in there because I don't have to do a supplemental claim down the road and go get a private DBQ to challenge their flimsy one. I have my own private one and I can challenge it. So you can have it both ways, I think.
Yeah. Just, every claim is different. But I think what makes yours the same is your thought process, the way you approached it. I hear so many, veterans so many times they say, well, I got the rating decision and they said no. And then I got several questions. Well, why did they say no? Well, let me just tell you what happened. No. Why did they say no? Do you have a copy of your claims folder? Well, I'm gonna do a high level review. Do you have a copy of your claims folder? No. So how are you going to be successful? Well, they gave me favorable findings. Well, what does that mean? They're supposed to do that when they deny you. That doesn't mean you're supposed to be service connected. And that just lets me know that they haven't done the research. They haven't taken the time to go out and get educated. And, you did all of that. So I know we went over the time.
A little, it's fine. It's fine.
I wanted to talk, but you just, what you were doing is, it's spot on when it pertains to the high level review process and even just being educated, period. So regardless of what stage are you at with your claim, just that education, getting educated and, understanding the process and how it can impact what you're doing with your claim. You did all that.
Well, I took time to do that before I filed. I had my notice to file in from February and I filed all my claims in August. So the ones I'm waiting for a decision on right now. So I spent all that time not only collecting my evidence, working with my private doctors to make sure the DBQs were filled out properly, because they're afraid they don't know how to always do that. These are foreign documents to them, but collecting the evidence, it may be worth it to buy the Adobe software that lets you collate your stuff. I did that too. So the VA only got one big file of medical evidence and not all these little documents, and they can't make sense out of it. So you got to organize your claim basically so it's more palatable to them.
Right. And I always, when you say that, I keep, I have it right here. I thought I wasn't going to show it, but I'll always show this here.
Oh yeah.
And back in the old days, you can see my tabs. So I can still go through here and find stuff because I have everything in chronological order. So when I went to my appeal, nothing was electronic. It was still paper. So when I was trying to appeal an effective date, almost 2.5 years before my appeal, I knew exactly July 11th, 2013. And they kept saying, well, we don't see it. I'm like, well, what month are you in? I'm in December 2014. I just told you it's July 2013. Why are you looking in, December 2014? Stop top sheeting, just keep, going through. And then they was like, oh, here it is. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So it goes to what you said, organized. And I remember having my legal pad with that. I only had one volume at the time. And I was sitting there, had everything tabbed. So I could, whatever I was, appealing, I could go right to whatever document if I needed it, So just in closing, is there anything that you want to add to this conversation or speak to other veterans that's going to see this. And I hope veterans take the time and review this, listen to this entire video, because from start to finish, the way you explain things was, it was perfect. I'm sitting here, I was just like, I'm blown away. I'm thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, she could, could probably a step away from being a basic adjudicator or something like that, just with, not only just your thought process of how you approached it, but just the information that you obtained since then. But just, is there anything else that you want to share with veterans just on this high-level review process?
Well, just, be organized in general in your thoughts. I said that before, but, be confident in what is in your claims file and your evidence, and let that speak for itself, because you can't introduce evidence in a high-level review. It has to speak for itself. You can't go in and make stuff up and say, I have BVA decisions that prove my case or anything like that. All right. You got to argue the evidence. And that's the case. If you read any BVA decision, any Court of Veterans Appeal case, it all comes down to evidence. All right. You can't introduce anything new. So it's either in there or it's not. And if it's not, you do a supplemental claim. So be very meticulous in how you file things and having the right evidence. And when it's go time, it's all in there. The answers are there. You have to present it. Take the time and organize it and deliver it.
Right. Well, one last question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you would have been as successful as you were on your high-level review if you didn't have a copy of your claims folder on CD?
No, I don't think I would have, because I made references to prove that I know this evidence is in there. I know it was referenced before. She knows. And I said this, and I even referenced the date. So no, I think it's important to have the claims file. And the other thing I wanted to say in closing is, after each claim decision, you should re-request it, even though it takes months to receive, because you want the most current claims file in case you have to go to private doctors to be seen, so they have everything that's current.
Wow, and that's spot on. That is, wow, that is spot. Like I said, when I read that comment, it was early in the morning, and I was like, we have got to do a testimonial. They got to get this recorded. I want other veterans to hear, your process and what you did from start to finish, from that 0996 to that scheduling of the high-level review and the actual high-level review, and then you shared the outcome that you received. So I just want to say thank you again for previously being a client of KMD 89 Consulting. Like I said, this is, I think the first time we met, seeing each other, we talked on the phone previously, but just thank you for, when you never meet me before, and just seeing my YouTube videos saying, hey, I'm gonna reach out to him, and you became a client. And we definitely appreciate you giving us the opportunity to educate you. But it just seems like you took a little bit and you was like, okay, I got it. And I'm going, and you went off to the races, and I'm so proud, so I definitely, and thank you for your service, and thank you for doing this testimonial today.
Hey, thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my story, and I hope it helps your subscribers. Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it will. If they watch the entire video, some like to cut out a little bit early, but if they do that, then hey, it's on them. They missed out on a great conversation, especially on a tough topic as a high-level review.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Take care. Bye.